This clip is going to study the digestive system. So we're going to be tracing food as it moves through the digestive system. And so it's going to move through a set of tubes, hollow tubes. And this tube-like structure is what we call the GI tract. So this stands for the gastrointestinal tract. So we're going to look at the organs that make up this tract, and then we're going to end this clip by looking at the walls of the GI tract. So we're going to look at the layers, the 4 different layers that make up the wall of the GI tract or the wall of your digestive system. So let's begin. Food is first going to enter the digestive system or the GI tract through the mouth. Right? Mouth, also known as the oral cavity. After the mouth, food is then going to reach the pharynx or the throat area. Next up, we have a very long, hollow muscular tube that we call the esophagus. Next, food is going to reach the stomach. After the stomach, we have the small intestine, named for its small diameter or narrow diameter. And so this is going to be 5 small intestine. And actually, the small intestine has 3 different regions. The first is called the duodenum. Next, we have the jejunum. And finally, the ileum. After food exits the small intestine, it's going to reach the large intestine. And so the large intestine, as you can see, is going to loop upwards, across, and back down. So we have what we call an ascending, transverse, and descending sections of this large intestine or the colon. So let's write those down. So we have number 6 is going to be the large intestine. Okay, so we're going to do ascending, transverse is across, and descending. Okay. We also have a few more regions of the large intestine. The region right here at the junction between the small and the large intestine, we call that the cecum. And then the region on the other end, right after the descending colon, we call that the sigmoid colon. Okay, so these are the different regions of the large intestine. We have the cecum, ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon, and sigmoid colon. Finally, we have number 7 is going to be the rectum, followed by the anal canal. Okay, and so this is basically the pathway that your food is going to take as it enters and passes through the GI tract. So now let's go ahead and look at what this GI tract is made of. What are the layers? What do they look like? So let's hypothetically draw out let's say a hollow tube to represent the GI tract. So let's look at the different layers that make up this wall. The innermost layer that is going to make up the GI tract is what we call the mucosa. So this is the deepest layer. Okay. It's the deepest layer. It is composed of an epithelium. Okay. And if you remember from the histology chapter, the epithelium that predominantly is found in the digestive system is the simple columnar epithelium. So one layer of column-shaped cells And these cells function to secrete and absorb because they need to secrete mucus and absorb nutrients. So this makes it perfect for the GI tract. We do have a few exceptions though. The mouth as well as the anal canal. These areas exposed to a little bit more friction, so they are made up of stratified squamous epithelium. So many layers of flattened cells because this will offer protection from friction. Mucosa also contains a connective tissue layer as well as a thin muscular layer called the muscularis mucosa. Okay. But then let's go ahead and look at the next layer. So the second layer that is going to be located superficial to the mucosa is what we call the submucosa. And the submucosa is one layer superficial to the mucosa, and it is made of connective tissue. Okay, and this is also the site or the layer that is going to contain blood vessels, lymphatics, nerve plexus. And it also contains MALT, mucosa-associated lymphatic tissue. These are different types of tissue or lymphatic tissue that are going to offer protection at the level of the intestines or the digestive system in general. Next up, we have a third layer. So the third layer that's even more superficial to the submucosa is what we call the muscularis externa. And the muscularis externa is very important because it is made up of two layers of smooth muscle. Okay, and again, if you remember from histology, the smooth muscle in the digestive system is very important because it's the contraction and relaxation of this muscle is what allows the food to be propelled through the digestive system. So this is very important for the motility to propel food. And so this movement of contraction and relaxation to squeeze food through the GI tract, we call this peristalsis. And finally, we have a fourth layer that is the most superficial layer, and this is what we call the serosa. And so the serosa is made up of just a thin layer of areolar tissue, connective tissue for protection, also made up of a simple squamous epithelium. So this is the most superficial layer. Okay, so here is our order of the different layers lining the GI tract, starting deep, so the innermost mucosa, all the way to the most superficial layer, or the external layer that we call the serosa.